shattered canvas. The elegant exhibition hall buzzed with conversation, champagne glasses clinked, and laughter rippled through well-dressed crowds admiring the latest design innovations. Priya Desai stood in the corner, fingers nervously adjusting the simple gold pendant at her neck, trying to become one with the sleek white wall behind her. 6 months ago, she would have been mingling confidently, discussing her design concepts with potential clients. Now she could barely look anyone in the eye. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, smoothing down her emerald green dress. Her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest felt like both shield and burden. Each design inside represented hours of work. Passion poured onto paper, work that her ex-boyfriend Rohan had dismissed as amateur doodling in front of the entire design community at the last expo. "You'll never make it in this industry." His words still echoed in her mind. "Your aesthetic is basic, your concept's derivative. I was just being kind keeping you around." The whispers followed her for months afterward. Poor Priya, dating Rohan Sharma just to advance her career. No wonder he dumped her when he saw her mediocre work. None of it was true. But truth seldom survived contact with gossip in Mumbai's competitive design circles. Tonight was her first industry event since that humiliation. Her therapist called it exposure therapy. Priya called it torture. "Excuse me, but aren't you Priya Desai?" The voice startled her. Deep, warm, with a hint of curiosity. Priya looked up to find herself facing a tall man with kind eyes the color of amber honey. His navy blue suit was impeccably tailored, but there was something approachable about his slightly crooked smile. "Yes," she said, waiting for the inevitable follow-up. "Aren't you the one Rohan humiliated? I saw your redesign of the Banerjee residence in Architectural Digest. The way you integrated traditional Indian elements with modern minimalism was brilliant. I've been hoping to meet you." Priya blinked, momentarily confused. "You liked my work?" "Liked it? I studied it. That curved entryway with the antique wooden doors repurposed as wall art? Inspired." He extended his hand. "Julian Hayes. I founded Hayes Architecture and Design." Of course, she knew who he was. Everyone did. Julian Hayes had revolutionized sustainable luxury spaces across Asia. His firm was responsible for some of the most innovative buildings in Mumbai, Singapore, and Bangkok. "Thank you," she managed, shaking his hand. "That project was special to me. I can tell. Your passion shows in the details." Julian gestured toward her portfolio. "Is that your current work?" Before she could answer, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Rohan had arrived, surrounded by his usual entourage of admirers. His gaze swept the room, pausing when he spotted Priya. A smirk formed on his lips as he whispered something to his companions, triggering their laughter. Priya felt herself shrinking. The confidence Julian's compliments had momentarily restored evaporating like morning dew under harsh sun. "Former client?" Julian asked, noticing her discomfort. "Former everything," Priya whispered. Something in Julian's expression shifted. Not pity, but understanding. "Would you mind showing me your portfolio somewhere quieter? We're looking for a fresh perspective for the Oceanside Cultural Center project. You want my input on a Hayes project?" Priya couldn't mask her surprise. Julian's smile reached his eyes. "I recognize talent when I see it, Ms. Desai, and from what I've seen, you have exactly the vision we need." For the first time in months, Priya felt a tiny spark reignite within her, not just hope, but the faintest glimmer of believing in herself again. Blueprints of Trust, the Hayes Architecture and Design headquarters occupied a renovated textile mill in Mumbai's burgeoning art district. Exposed brick walls contrasted with gleaming glass partitions, while potted plants cascaded from repurposed wooden beams. Priya's heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped off the elevator onto the 6th floor, portfolio tucked under her arm. 2 weeks had passed since the exhibition where Julian had shown interest in her work. She'd spent every waking moment refining her concepts for the Oceanside Cultural Center, fighting waves of self-doubt that threatened to drown her creativity. Each time Rohan's mocking voice invaded her thoughts, she pushed back harder, channeling her frustration into her designs. "Priya!" Right on time. Julian emerged from a conference room, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a pencil tucked behind his ear. Today, he looked less like a prestigious CEO and more like a fellow designer lost in the creative process. The team's eager to see what you've brought us. She followed him into a sunlit space where 4 people gathered around a massive table covered in drawings and material samples. Julian made quick introductions: his senior architect, Layla, structural engineer, Vikram, sustainability coordinator, Thomas, and project manager, Divya. This is Priya Desai, the interior designer I mentioned, Julian said, his tone warm with respect. She's going to show us a fresh approach to the cultural center's community spaces. Priya unfolded her portfolio with trembling hands. I've prepared 3 distinct concepts based on your initial blueprints, she began, her voice barely audible. We can't hear you, dear, Layla said kindly. Speak up. Inhaling deeply, Priya remembered her mother's advice. Stand tall like you're wearing a crown, even when you feel like you're wearing chains. My first concept, she continued, voice stronger, integrates local artistic traditions through interactive installations that change with the seasons. As she explained each design, her confidence grew. Her ideas flowed more freely, her gestures became animated. For these precious minutes, Rohan's ghost retreated to the shadows. When she finished, the room fell silent. Priya's stomach knotted. Had she misread Julian's interest? Was this another humiliation waiting to happen? Vikram whistled low. These are exceptional, especially the modular performance space that can transform based on the type of cultural event. I love how you've incorporated passive cooling elements into the aesthetic, Thomas added. It's sustainable without screaming eco-friendly. One by one, they offered genuine praise mixed with constructive feedback. No condescension, no hidden agendas, just professional respect. Julian remained quiet until everyone had spoken. What impresses me most, he finally said, is how you've captured the spirit of community engagement we've been missing. This isn't just beautiful design, it's thoughtful, purposeful. So, you like it? Priya asked, still unable to fully trust the positive reception. Julian's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. We don't like it, Priya, we need it. How soon can you start as our lead interior designer for this project? The offer stunned her into momentary silence. Lead designer? On a project this significant? 6 months ago, it would have been her dream opportunity. Now, anxiety clouded the moment. I don't know if I'm... She started. Ready? Julian finished. You are. Your work proves it. Later that afternoon, Julian walked Priya through the building, showing her where her workspace would be if she accepted the position. They paused at a balcony overlooking the city, the setting sun painting Mumbai's skyline in shades of amber and gold. Can I ask you something personal? Priya ventured, watching pigeons swoop between buildings. Of course. Why me? There are dozens of more established designers you could have chosen. Julian leaned against the railing, considering her question. When I started this firm, I had innovative ideas but limited experience. Most clients wouldn't take a chance on me. His gaze turned distant with memory. One architect, Nandini Mehta, saw something in my work that others missed. She gave me my first major commission when no one else would. The riverfront development? Priya guessed. He nodded. Nandini taught me that talent doesn't always come in expected packages. Sometimes the most brilliant designs come from those with something to prove. Julian turned to face her directly. Your ex-boyfriend at that exhibition? I recognized him. Rohan Sharma has technical skill but lacks soul in his work. Your designs have both precision and heart. Priya's eyes widened. You knew who he was that night? Mumbai's design world is small, Julian replied with a shrug. I've heard rumors about how he treats people, especially women whose talent threatens him. Something in Priya's chest unraveled. The tight knot of shame she'd been carrying loosened slightly. She wasn't alone in seeing through Rohan's charming facade. This opportunity isn't charity, Priya, Julian continued. It's recognition of your exceptional ability. The question is whether you're ready to believe in yourself as much as I believe in your talent. The fading light caught the determination forming in Priya's eyes. When do we start? Julian's smile was genuine. We already have. As she signed the contract the following morning, Priya felt something she hadn't experienced in nearly a year. the quiet confidence of standing on solid ground. Not because Julian Hayes had chosen her, but because she was choosing herself again, one blueprint at a time. Foundation of friendship. The monsoon arrived with dramatic flair, turning Mumbai's streets into rushing rivers and the sky into a canvas of electric storms. For 6 weeks, Priya had immersed herself in the Cultural Center project, transforming Julian's architectural vision with her interior concepts. Their professional relationship had settled into a rhythm of creative collaboration that felt surprisingly natural. Tonight, she worked late at the office, losing track of time as she refined the interactive art installation for the main hall. Rain lashed against the windows, creating a soothing background soundtrack to her focused work. "You're still here?" Julian's voice came from the doorway. He carried 2 steaming cups, the aroma of masala chai filling the room. "It's almost midnight." Priya stretched, suddenly aware of her stiff shoulders. "I wanted to finish these renderings before tomorrow's client meeting." She accepted the chai gratefully. "What's your excuse?" "Quarterly financial reports," he grimaced. "Not nearly as creative as your work." Lightning flashed, followed by a thunderclap that shook the building. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the office into darkness. "Perfect timing," Julian laughed softly. His phone flashlight clicked on, casting long shadows across the studio. "Power outages. Mumbai's most reliable monsoon tradition." "At least I saved my files," Priya said, reaching for her own phone light. Their beams crossed, creating a pool of light between them. Julian gathered some emergency candles from a drawer, and soon a warm glow replaced the harsh phone lights. The rain continued its percussion against the windows, cocooning them in a strange, intimate bubble separate from the world. "How did you get into architecture?" Priya asked, settling onto the floor with her back against a cabinet, chai warming her hands. Julian sat cross-legged opposite her. "My father was a construction worker. He built other people's visions but never had the opportunity to create his own." His voice softened with memory. "Every Sunday, he'd take me to different buildings around the city. Skyscrapers, temples, colonial structures, teaching me to appreciate the stories buildings tell." "And you wanted to tell your own stories," Priya surmised. "Exactly. But the path wasn't easy." Julian twisted his chai cup between his palms. "I won a scholarship to architecture school, but I never quite fit in. The other students came from privileged backgrounds, had traveled the world studying great buildings. I was the scholarship kid with calloused hands who'd helped his father pour concrete." Priya hadn't expected this vulnerability from someone as accomplished as Julian. In the candlelight, the polished CEO facade melted away, revealing someone who understood struggle. "What about you?" he asked. "How did interior design capture your heart?" "My grandmother." Priya smiled at the memory. "She was a textile artist who transformed our modest home with her creations. She taught me that beautiful spaces aren't about wealth. They're about intention, about making people feel something when they enter a room." They talked for hours as the storm raged outside, about childhood dreams, professional disappointments, creative triumphs. Julian described the project that nearly bankrupted his fledgling firm. Priya shared stories of design school, where her traditional Indian influences were sometimes dismissed as ethnic curiosities rather than legitimate inspiration. Neither mentioned Rohan directly, but his shadow hovered in Priya's hesitations, in the way she sometimes qualified her opinions with, "but I could be wrong," or "it's just a thought." During a comfortable lull in conversation, Julian said quietly, "Can I ask you something personal?" Priya nodded, the candlelight casting a warm glow on her face. "What happened with your ex that made you doubt yourself so profoundly? I see how you second-guess your instincts, even when they're brilliant." The question should have felt invasive, but somehow it didn't. Perhaps it was the storm creating this pocket of suspended reality. Or perhaps it was the foundation of trust they'd built over weeks of collaboration. "Rohan wasn't always cruel," she began slowly. "At first he was encouraging, even mentored me. But as my work began receiving attention, something changed. His criticisms became constant. My color choices were predictable. my spatial concept's derivative. I started changing my designs to please him, losing my authentic voice. She traced patterns in the condensation on her empty cup. The night you met me was 3 months after he humiliated me at the Mumbai Design Awards. I'd been nominated for an emerging talent recognition. Instead of supporting me, he publicly criticized my portfolio, suggesting I'd only been nominated because of my connection to him. He made sure everyone heard. Julian's expression darkened. That says everything about his character and nothing about your talent. Logically, I know that, Priya admitted. But healing isn't always logical. No, Julian agreed softly. It never is. He shared his own story then of Amara, his fiancée who'd left him when his first major project failed, claiming she hadn't signed up for a struggling architect. The wound had healed, but left its mark in his careful approach to relationships, both personal and professional. When the lights suddenly flickered back on, both blinked in the harsh fluorescence, somehow disappointed that their candlelit cocoon had been breached by reality. "Look at the time," Julian said, checking his watch. "Almost 3 in the morning." Priya gathered her things, suddenly shy. They'd crossed some invisible boundary tonight, moving from colleagues to something more complicated. Not romance, not yet, but a friendship built on mutual understanding of each other's broken places. As they walked to the elevator, Julian said, "Thank you for staying late tonight." Priya smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "For the project or the conversation?" "Both," he replied simply. "Definitely both." Constructing Courage, the Mumbai Architectural Association's annual gala, transformed the historic Bao Daji Lad Museum into a glittering showcase of the industry's finest achievements. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over exhibits, highlighting the year's most innovative designs, including a prominently featured display of the Hayes Oceanside Cultural Center, now 6 months into construction, with Priya's interior concepts moving from renderings to reality. "Deep breaths," Priya murmured to herself, adjusting the drape of her crimson silk sari embroidered with subtle gold threadwork. Tonight marked a professional milestone, her first public recognition as lead designer on a major project. It should have been a moment of unalloyed triumph, but Rohan would be here. The thought made her stomach clench. "That color is stunning on you," came Julian's voice as he approached, handsome in a charcoal suit with a burgundy tie that complemented her sari, a coincidence that didn't go unnoticed by either of them. Over the past months, their friendship had deepened through late nights at the office, weekend site visits, and conversations that increasingly strayed beyond professional boundaries. "Ready to show off our project?" he asked, offering his arm. "Terrified," she admitted, taking it, "but in a good way, like standing at the edge of a cliff with a parachute I've tested 100 times but still feels like a leap of faith." Julian laughed. "That's the most designer description of anxiety I've ever heard." They made their way through the exhibition, stopping to admire colleagues' work and accept congratulations on their own. The Hayes display drew consistent crowds, with Priya's innovative community space designs receiving particular praise. Each compliment reinforced what Julian had been telling her for months. Her talent was exceptional, her vision unique. Julian Hayes, the man who's revolutionizing cultural spaces across Asia. The familiar voice sent ice through Priya's veins. Rohan approached, champagne flute in hand, his smile sharp as a paper cut. He'd grown a carefully groomed beard since she'd last seen him, his designer glasses and sleek suit projecting calculated sophistication. "Rohan," Julian acknowledged coolly. "I believe you know Priya Desai, our lead interior designer for the Oceanside project." Rohan's eyes narrowed fractionally, taking in Priya's transformation from the shrinking woman he'd last encountered. "Of course. Priya and I have. History." His tone suggested intimate knowledge that made Priya's cheeks burn. "Ancient history," she corrected, surprising herself with her steady voice. "I was just admiring your contribution to the cultural center," Rohan continued, his tone suggesting the opposite. Interesting choice to emphasize interactive spaces over traditional gallery configurations. Rather, unconventional. Before, such veiled criticism would have devastated her. Now, Priya recognized it for what it was: insecurity masked as superiority. Unconventional was precisely the brief, she replied. The center serves a community that values participatory culture over passive observation. Our design reflects that priority. Julian watched her with quiet pride but remained silent, allowing her to hold her ground without intervention. Bold choice, Rohan persisted, especially for someone still establishing credibility in the industry. Priya felt an unexpected calm settle over her. You know what I've learned, Rohan? True credibility comes from creating spaces that serve their purpose beautifully, not from impressing other designers with technical flourishes that users never notice or appreciate. Something flickered in Rohan's eyes, recognition that the woman before him was not the same one he had belittled into silence months ago. Well, he said, recovering quickly, I'm sure Julian's guidance has been invaluable to your development. The implication hung in the air, that any success must be attributed to Julian's influence rather than her own talent. Before Priya could respond, the association president clinked a glass for attention, announcing the beginning of the awards ceremony. As they moved toward the presentation area, Julian whispered, Do you want me to say something to that arrogant— No, Priya interrupted with a small smile. I've spent too long letting his opinion matter. He doesn't get any more space in my head. The ceremony proceeded with the expected speeches and acknowledgments. When the Hayes project was recognized for excellence in community-centered design, Julian insisted that Priya join him on stage, publicly crediting her vision as the heart of the project's success. Later, as they shared a quiet moment on the museum's balcony overlooking the illuminated garden, Priya found herself laughing. What's so funny? Julian asked, leaning against the stone balustrade. 6 months ago, I was hiding from Rohan at an industry event when you found me. Tonight, I stood my ground without flinching. She shook her head in wonder. I knew my design skills were improving, but I didn't realize my backbone was getting stronger too. Julian studied her face in the gentle garden lighting. You know that was all you, right? I never fixed you, Priya. I just created a space where you could remember who you already were. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. The air felt charged with something neither was quite ready to name. The project will be finished in 2 months, Julian finally said. Have you thought about what comes next? The question carried weight beyond professional planning. Priya turned to face him fully, seeing questions in his eyes that mirrored her own. I'm not sure, she answered honestly. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of the answer. As they rejoined the gala, Priya caught Rohan watching them from across the room, his expression unreadable. But this time, his gaze held no power over her. She had built something more substantial than his approval or criticism could touch. Not just a successful design career, but a renewed belief in her own worth. The final design. The Oceanside Cultural Center opened to the public on a perfect spring morning. Sunlight streaming through the massive skylights Priya had insisted upon, casting kaleidoscope patterns across the bamboo flooring. Children raced through interactive art installations, while elders gathered in conversation pods designed to amplify acoustics for those with hearing difficulties. Every element, from the locally sourced materials to the flexible spaces that could transform for different community needs, reflected Priya's philosophy that good design served people first. Aesthetic second. She stood in the central atrium, watching her vision come alive through human interaction. After months of drawings, models, and construction site visits, seeing real people enjoy the space brought tears to her eyes. Magnificent, isn't it? Julian appeared beside her, hands clasped behind his back, watching a group of school children interact with the textile installation that changed colors as they moved through it. When spaces actually work the way we imagined? Better than I imagined, Priya admitted. Design is always theoretical until people bring it to life. They walked through the bustling center, noting how visitors naturally flowed through the spaces, lingering where intended, moving efficiently where needed. Occasionally, they were stopped by community members offering thanks and praise, which Priya accepted with newfound grace rather than deflection. By late afternoon, the inaugural events concluded and the staff began preparing for the evening gala. Priya retreated to a quiet mezzanine overlooking the main hall, mentally cataloging small adjustments for tomorrow, more seating near the eastern windows, better signage for the interactive historical exhibit. There you are, Julian said, joining her at the railing. The project manager needs your input on the lighting sequence for tonight's performances. I'll be right down, she nodded, but neither moved. The past year had transformed them both. Julian had learned to delegate more, trusting his team rather than micromanaging every detail. Priya had reclaimed her confidence, her designs now bearing her distinctive aesthetic without apology or qualification. Their professional partnership had flourished, with 2 more major projects already in development. But something else had grown alongside their professional success, something carefully maintained within professional boundaries, yet undeniably present in lingering glances, conversations that stretched into the night, and an intuitive understanding of each other's creative process. I have something for you, Julian said, breaking the comfortable silence. He presented a small package wrapped in handmade paper. Priya unwrapped it carefully to reveal a beautifully crafted brass compass, its face etched with intricate designs reminiscent of traditional Indian mandalas. It's beautiful, she murmured, running her finger over the detailed engravings. It belonged to my father, Julian explained. He used it on construction sites before digital tools took over. He always said a good builder needs to know true north, no matter what distractions surround them. Priya looked up, understanding the significance of such a personal gift. Julian, I can't accept something so meaningful to your family. That's exactly why I want you to have it, he said quietly. This project marks the end of our formal working relationship. Hayes and Associates has offered you a partnership. The news stunned her. A partnership? But I've only been with the firm for a year, in which you've transformed not just the cultural center, but our entire approach to community spaces, Julian finished. The board voted unanimously. Pride swelled in Priya's chest, but confusion followed. The end of our working relationship? Are you leaving the firm? No, Julian smiled. But if you accept the partnership, company policy would make me your colleague, not your supervisor. The implication hung between them, charged with possibility. And why would that distinction matter? Priya asked, though she already knew the answer. Julian took a step closer. Because I've spent a year admiring your talent, your resilience, your vision. And somewhere along the way, I started admiring much more than that. His voice dropped lower. But I promised myself I wouldn't cross that line while I was in a position of authority. Priya's heart raced. The compass felt warm in her palm, a physical reminder of finding one's true direction. What if I don't want the partnership? She challenged, a hint of her newly reclaimed confidence sparkling in her eyes. Then I would respect your decision, Julian answered seriously, and find another way to restructure our professional relationship before asking you to dinner. Priya laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet mezzanine. You've been planning this? Hoping, he corrected. Planning implies I had any control over the outcome. Priya considered the man before her, not the successful CEO who had given her a second chance, but the person who had shown her his own vulnerabilities, who had created space for her to rebuild without rushing the process, who had stood back and let her face her demons on her own terms. You know, she said thoughtfully, a year ago, I might have thought I needed you, your approval, your validation. I might have accepted your interest as a replacement for what I lost with Rohan. Julian nodded, accepting her honesty without defense. But now, Priya continued, I know I don't need you. I've rebuilt myself, reclaimed my vision. I stand on my own foundation. She took a step closer to him. And that's precisely why I can choose you. Not from need, but from genuine desire. The distinction was crucial, the difference between dependency and partnership. I accept the partnership offer, she said, closing her hand around the compass. "And I'd like to have dinner with you, tonight after the gala." Julian's smile held relief and anticipation in equal measure. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they descended to rejoin the preparations for the evening celebration, Priya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The pain of Rohan's cruelty had not disappeared completely. Such wounds never vanished without trace, but it had transformed into something useful: discernment, resilience, wisdom. The final design of her life would continue evolving, changing to accommodate new experiences and challenges. But the foundation had been rebuilt, stronger than before. She had rediscovered her true north. And as Julian's hand briefly brushed against hers while they walked through the space they had created together, Priya recognized that the most beautiful designs were those with room to grow, space for unexpected additions, surprising collaborations, and the courage to sometimes tear down walls to let in more light.